a silent storm brewing, the hidden cost of tariffs on everyday lives. That this isn't just a distant possibility, it's a reality quietly unfolding as tariffs creep into our daily lives, adding hidden costs to the things we rely on most. While policymakers debate and industries adjust, it's the everyday consumer who bears the brunt of these economic shifts. The question is, how much more can we endure before the burden becomes unbearable? Let's uncover the true impact of tariffs, not in boardrooms or financial reports, but in the lives of ordinary people, because in the end, it's not just about trade wars. It's about the struggles, sacrifices, and survival of millions. Rising costs for consumers, tariffs, increased prices on everyday goods, making essentials less affordable for families. Limited choices and supply chain disruptions. Higher import taxes can lead to reduced product availability, forcing consumers to settle for fewer options. The strain on small businesses, local businesses relying on imported materials, face higher costs, which may lead to layoffs or closures. Economic uncertainty and market volatility. Tariffs can trigger inflation, slow economic growth, and create instability in financial markets. Hidden tax on the public. While tariffs target foreign goods, the true cost is passed down to consumers, functioning as an indirect tax on everyday people. When tariffs are imposed on imported goods, the first and most immediate impact is felt by consumers through rising costs. These added expenses are not absorbed by corporations or foreign manufacturers alone. Instead, they trickle down to the everyday person who must now pay more for essential goods and services. The impact is subtle at first, appearing as minor price hikes that may go unnoticed. However, as tariffs persist, these small increases accumulate, creating a substantial burden on household budgets. Consider a family that relies on imported food products, electronics, or clothing. With tariffs in place, the cost of these items rises due to the increased expense of bringing them into the country. A carton of milk, a smartphone, or a pair of shoes that once fit comfortably within a budget may now require difficult financial choices. Parents who once purchased fresh fruits and vegetables for their children might have to opt for lower quality alternatives. College students saving for tuition could find themselves paying more for textbooks or basic living expenses. The effects reach every corner of society, leaving no one untouched. Beyond everyday purchases, rising costs due to tariffs can influence larger financial decisions. The price of cars, home appliances, and even building materials skyrockets, making it harder for people to buy homes, renovate properties, or invest in new vehicles. A young couple dreaming of purchasing their first home might see construction costs rise due to tariffs on imported steel and lumber. Small business owners looking to expand may find that essential equipment is now too expensive, forcing them to delay growth or cut costs elsewhere. For those living paycheck to paycheck, these price hikes are not just inconvenient, they can be devastating. Many families operate on tight budgets, carefully balancing expenses to cover necessities like rent, utilities, and medical bills. When tariffs cause prices to rise, something has to give. Some may have to cut back on groceries, while others might delay medical visits or essential prescriptions. For a senior citizen living on a fixed income, a few extra dollars on medication or household essentials could mean the difference between comfort and hardship. At first glance, it may seem that tariffs only target foreign products, but in reality, they function as a tax on consumers. Companies facing higher import costs do not simply accept lower profits. They adjust their pricing structures to ensure they maintain financial stability. This means that ultimately it is the consumer who foots the bill. Even industries that rely on domestic production are affected, as they may depend on imported raw materials or components. An American-made product might still carry a higher price tag because the parts used to assemble it have been subjected to tariffs. The rising cost of goods due to tariffs disproportionately affects middle class and low-income families, widening economic inequality. While wealthier individuals may be able to absorb these increases without significantly altering their lifestyles, those with limited financial flexibility face difficult trade-offs. A family struggling to afford daycare might now find their grocery bill rising, forcing them to reconsider other necessary expenses. Parents working multiple jobs to provide for their children could see their hard-earned money stretched thinner than ever before. Every sector of the economy feels the ripple effects of rising costs caused by tariffs, from grocery stores to gas stations, clothing retailers to technology companies. The increased expenses find their way into every transaction. What starts as a government policy designed to protect domestic industries ultimately places the heaviest burden on the everyday consumer, shaping financial decisions and altering lifestyles in ways that may not be immediately visible but are deeply felt. When tariffs are introduced, their effects go beyond just higher prices. They also lead to limited choices and disruptions in supply chains. Consumers may find their favorite products disappearing from shelves, replaced by more expensive or lower quality alternatives. This happens because tariffs make it more costly for companies to import goods, forcing them to either stop bringing in certain products altogether or find substitute suppliers who may not meet the same standards of quality or affordability. One of the most noticeable consequences of tariffs is the reduced availability of imported goods. Many industries rely on global supply chains to deliver products efficiently and affordably, whether it's electronics, clothing, automobiles, or food. Companies source materials and components from around the world to keep costs down and ensure a steady supply. When tariffs disrupt this process, businesses are forced to make tough decisions, either pay the higher costs and pass them on to consumers, search for alternative suppliers, or discontinue products entirely. For instance, if tariffs are placed on imported fruits, grocery stores may offer fewer options or increase prices on previously affordable produce. A family accustomed to buying fresh berries or tropical fruits might find these items less available or too expensive to justify. The same applies to household goods and technology. A favorite brand of appliances or smartphones may suddenly become harder to find because manufacturers no longer find it profitable to import them. Consumers are left with fewer choices, often settling for products that don't meet their previous expectations in terms of quality or price. Tariffs also create uncertainty in the supply chain, making it harder for businesses to plan and maintain consistent product availability. Many industries operate on just-in-time inventory models, meaning they don't keep large stockpiles of goods, but instead rely on a steady flow of imports. When tariffs are introduced, companies often face delays and disruptions as they attempt to restructure their supply chains to minimize costs. This can lead to shortages, longer waiting times, and unpredictable price fluctuations. Small businesses are especially vulnerable to these disruptions. Unlike large corporations with extensive supplier networks, small retailers and manufacturers may struggle to find alternative sources for their products. If a boutique clothing store relies on fabrics from overseas, tariffs can force them to raise prices or stop carrying certain lines altogether. A local auto repair shop that needs imported parts might struggle to complete repairs quickly, frustrating customers and potentially losing business. Another major concern is the risk of decreased product quality. In an effort to avoid tariffs, some companies switch to lower-cost suppliers who may not meet the same quality standards. A manufacturer that previously imported high-quality steel for construction might have to source from a different country with less reliable materials. A food brand that once used premium imported ingredients may be forced to cut corners, leading to a decline in taste, texture, or nutritional value. The automotive industry is a prime example of how tariffs can limit consumer choices. Many car manufacturers rely on imported components, even if the vehicles themselves are assembled domestically. When tariffs increase costs, companies may reduce the number of models available, discontinue certain features, or pass on the expenses to buyers. This means that a customer shopping for a new car may find fewer options within their budget, forcing them to compromise on features or stretch their finances further. Even in industries where domestic production is strong, supply chain disruptions can still affect consumer options. Many American-made products rely on imported raw materials, and when tariffs drive up costs, manufacturers may be forced to cut back on production. This can lead to reduced variety as companies prioritize their most profitable items and discontinue others. Shoppers who once had a wide range of options may suddenly find themselves with only a handful of choices, many of which are more expensive than before. Ultimately, tariffs do more than just raise prices. They reshape the marketplace, limit availability, and make it harder for consumers to access the products they need and want. The interconnected nature of global trade means that when one part of the supply chain is disrupted, the effects ripple outward, touching every industry and every household. As choices diminish and supply chains strain under the pressure, the impact is felt most by everyday consumers who have little control over these changes but must adapt to them nonetheless. One of the first and most painful effects of tariffs is the rise in consumer prices. Many of the products that American households rely on, from groceries to electronics, automobiles to household appliances, contain imported materials or are manufactured overseas. When tariffs make these imports more expensive, businesses have two choices: absorb the extra costs, which often leads to job cuts and wage stagnation, or pass the costs on to consumers. In most cases, they do the latter. As a result, families find themselves paying more for essential goods, stretching their already tight budgets even further. For lower-income households, which spend a larger portion of their income on necessities, these price increases can be devastating. The consequences extend beyond the checkout aisle. Small businesses, the backbone of the American economy, are particularly vulnerable to the effects of tariffs. Many rely on imported materials and equipment to operate efficiently. When tariffs drive up the cost of these supplies, small business owners face an impossible dilemma: raise prices and risk losing customers, cut back on hiring, or in some cases shut down entirely. Unlike large corporations that may have the resources to absorb short-term losses, small businesses have little room for error. The result is a wave of closures, layoffs, and economic decline in communities that depend on these businesses for jobs and stability. The job market itself takes a massive hit when tariffs disrupt industries. While some sectors may see temporary relief from foreign competition, many more suffer. Industries that depend on exports, agriculture, manufacturing, and technology are often the first to feel the pain. When other countries retaliate with their own tariffs, American farmers, factory workers, and tech employees find their markets shrinking. Crops that were once sold overseas now sit unsold, manufacturing plants slow production, and businesses that once flourished in global trade struggle to survive. The net result is job losses, economic uncertainty, and declining wages for workers who rely on these industries. Beyond the direct financial impact, tariffs create an atmosphere of uncertainty that discourages investment and economic growth. Businesses thrive when they can plan for the future with confidence, but when tariffs introduce unpredictability into the market, companies hesitate to expand, hire new workers, or invest in innovation. This slowdown in business activity has long-term effects, weakening the economy and reducing opportunities for upward mobility. Job security becomes more fragile, wage growth stalls, and the American dream feels increasingly out of reach for millions. Rational leadership understands that economies do not operate in isolation. Global trade is a carefully balanced ecosystem where businesses, workers, and consumers all depend on the free flow of goods and services. By imposing tariffs, leaders disrupt this balance, creating ripple effects that extend far beyond what they initially anticipate. This is not strategy. It is recklessness disguised as economic policy. Instead of fostering growth, tariffs introduce uncertainty, push businesses toward crisis mode, and force everyday citizens to bear the burden of rising costs. The mark of a strong leader is the ability to listen to experts, economists, and industry professionals, those who understand the markets and have seen firsthand the consequences of protectionist policies. When legendary investors, business leaders, and financial analysts all sound the alarm, a responsible leader does not ignore them or dismiss their concerns for the sake of political optics. Instead, they assess the data, acknowledge the risks, and adapt policies that promote sustainable economic growth rather than temporary political points. The damage caused by tariffs does not stop at financial loss. It extends to America's global reputation. A nation that once championed free trade and open markets now risks alienating allies and partners. International relationships built on trust, cooperation, and mutual economic benefit begin to unravel when one side suddenly imposes unilateral restrictions. Trade partners retaliate, negotiations break down, and economic alliances fracture, leaving American businesses and workers to pay the price. Leadership is about making decisions not just for today, but for the future. A visionary leader does not resort to economic isolationism, but instead finds ways to strengthen industries through innovation, investment, and strategic partnerships. The strongest economies in the world are built on adaptability and collaboration, not on artificial barriers that stifle competition and progress. Tariffs may create the illusion of control, but they ultimately weaken the very industries they claim to protect. The path to true economic strength lies in policies grounded in reason, not in reactionary measures that history has already proven to be failures. Small businesses are the backbone of any economy, providing jobs, fostering innovation, and serving as pillars of local communities. However, when tariffs are imposed, these businesses often bear the brunt of the financial strain, facing higher costs for raw materials, supplies, and imported goods. Unlike large corporations with vast resources to absorb these expenses or shift production, small businesses operate on tight margins, making it difficult for them to stay competitive in an increasingly expensive market. One of the most immediate challenges small businesses face due to tariffs is the increased cost of materials. Many local manufacturers and retailers rely on imported goods to create or sell their products. Whether it's steel for construction, fabric for clothing, or electronic components for tech startups, these essential materials often come from foreign suppliers. When tariffs drive up import costs, businesses have two options: absorb the extra expenses and reduce profits, or pass the cost increases on to customers. Neither choice is ideal. Lower profits can mean fewer employees, slower growth, and potential closures, while higher prices can drive customers away, making it harder to compete with larger companies that can afford to keep prices steady. For example, a small furniture business that sources wood or metal from abroad may suddenly find their material costs rising due to tariffs. If they attempt to absorb these costs, their profit margins shrink dramatically, making it harder to reinvest in the business, hire more workers, or expand operations. If they raise prices, they risk losing customers to larger competitors who can afford to keep prices lower by mass-producing goods, or shifting production to other countries unaffected by tariffs. Another major issue for small businesses is supply chain disruption. Many rely on just-in-time inventory systems, meaning they don't keep large stockpiles of materials or finished goods. Instead, they depend on a steady flow of imports to maintain operations. When tariffs disrupt this process, delays become inevitable. A small boutique that imports specialty fabrics from overseas may suddenly face weeks-long delays as suppliers adjust to the new cost structures. A local electronics repair shop that needs imported replacement parts might struggle to serve customers on time, leading to frustration and loss of business. Tariffs also make it harder for small businesses to plan for the future, since trade policies can change quickly based on political or economic shifts. Businesses are left in a state of uncertainty. Without knowing whether tariffs will increase, decrease, or be removed altogether, small business owners struggle to make long-term investment decisions. Expanding a business requires confidence in stable costs and supply chains, but tariffs introduce unpredictability, making it risky to hire new employees, open new locations, or invest in marketing. Additionally, tariffs create an uneven playing field between small businesses and larger corporations. While big companies can often negotiate better deals with suppliers or shift production to different countries, smaller companies have fewer options. A global corporation with factories around the world can move production to avoid tariffs, but a local manufacturer does not have that luxury. This competitive disadvantage forces many small businesses to cut costs in other ways, such as reducing employee hours, delaying raises, or even laying off workers to stay afloat. The impact of tariffs on small businesses also extends to consumers. When local businesses struggle, communities suffer. Small shops may be forced to close, reducing the variety of goods and services available to residents. Employees who lose their jobs have less disposable income to spend, which in turn affects other businesses in the area. The ripple effect of tariffs can weaken entire neighborhoods, leading to empty storefronts, reduced economic activity, and a general decline in financial stability for local families. And moreover, small exporters are not immune to the negative effects of tariffs. Many American small businesses sell their products overseas, and when other countries retaliate with tariffs of their own, these businesses face shrinking international markets. A family-owned farm that exports specialty produce may suddenly find foreign buyers turning to other countries with lower tariffs. A small craft brewery that previously shipped its products abroad might see a decline in international demand as tariffs make their beer more expensive in foreign markets. Ultimately, tariffs place small businesses in a precarious position. They must navigate higher costs, supply chain disruptions, and increased competition from larger corporations, all while trying to maintain customer loyalty and financial stability. While big businesses may have the flexibility to weather these economic changes, small businesses are often left with limited options, many of which lead to difficult choices that impact their employees, customers, and local economies. Economic uncertainty and market volatility are some of the most significant consequences of tariffs, affecting not just businesses and consumers, but also the broader financial system. When tariffs are introduced, they create ripple effects that disrupt industries, shake investor confidence, and slow economic growth. Markets thrive on stability, and any disruption, especially one that impacts trade, can lead to unpredictable fluctuations that make financial planning difficult for both individuals and businesses. One of the most immediate ways tariffs contribute to economic uncertainty is by increasing costs across multiple sectors. When companies face higher import taxes, they must either pass those costs on to consumers, cut expenses elsewhere, or absorb the losses. This leads to uncertainty about future earnings, which can cause stock prices to become highly volatile. Investors react to these changes by shifting their money to safer assets, leading to sharp declines in stock markets or unpredictable swings in major indexes. Large companies that depend on global supply chains see their stock values fluctuate, affecting retirement accounts, pensions, and investment portfolios. For businesses, this unpredictability makes it challenging to plan for the future. Companies looking to expand, hire more workers, or invest in new projects may hesitate if they are unsure how tariffs will impact costs in the long run. If a manufacturer relies on imported materials, and suddenly faces higher expenses due to tariffs, they might delay hiring workers or scaling operations. This hesitation creates a domino effect throughout the economy. When businesses slow down, job growth stalls, wages stagnate, and consumer spending declines. Economic uncertainty also affects industries that rely on exports. Many countries respond to tariffs by imposing their own retaliatory tariffs, making American goods more expensive overseas. This reduces demand for U.S. products in foreign markets, leading to lower sales and lost revenue. Farmers, for example, often depend on international buyers for their crops. But when foreign governments impose tariffs on American agricultural products, these farmers struggle to find buyers, leading to financial losses and even farm closures. Similarly, American manufacturers that previously sold machinery, vehicles, or electronics abroad may see their customer base shrink due to rising costs. Another consequence of tariffs is inflation, which further adds to market volatility. When businesses pay more for imported goods and materials, those costs often trickle down to everyday purchases. Consumers find themselves paying more for groceries, household goods, and even gas. As inflation rises, central banks may respond by increasing interest rates to slow down price growth, which can further strain businesses and individuals who rely on loans for expansion or major purchases. Higher interest rates make it more expensive to borrow money, discouraging companies from making investments and consumers from taking out loans for homes or cars. Currency markets also react strongly to tariffs, leading to fluctuations in the value of the dollar and other global currencies. When trade tensions rise, investors may lose confidence in the stability of the economy, leading to sudden shifts in currency exchange rates. This can make U.S. exports more expensive, further reducing demand from international buyers. On the other hand, if foreign economies weaken due to tariffs, global economic slowdowns can result, affecting American businesses that rely on international customers. The unpredictability caused by tariffs has long-term consequences for economic growth. Businesses and investors need a stable environment to make strategic decisions. But when trade policies shift rapidly, companies may delay expansion, halt new projects, or relocate operations to avoid financial risk. Some businesses might even move production to other countries with more favorable trade conditions, resulting in job losses domestically. Financial markets, which react to every sign of economic instability, become more volatile as investors attempt to navigate the uncertain landscape. This volatility can impact everything from retirement savings to interest rates on loans, ultimately influencing the financial well-being of millions of people. When markets swing unpredictably, it creates a sense of insecurity that affects spending behavior, investment decisions, and overall economic confidence.